Radio, the voice of Oyo State.
Good morning, and you're welcome to the Business and Life series on Aloore Radio, transmitting from the GSM studio at the Ministry of Information, Culture and Tourism, Secretariat, Agodi, Ibadan. You're welcome to another wonderful session this morning, as we always do every Tuesday from 10 to 11 a.m. My name is Oluwatoyin Onomade. And if you have been following us on this series, you've seen that we discuss different topics and bring different professionals to, discuss different topics around business and around life generally. And this morning is not an exception, as we will be discussing on the topic of cost and money management for businesses. So if you are someone who is running a business right now, you're an entrepreneur, you're a business owner, or you're someone who is intending to run a business someday soon, this session will definitely be of immense benefit to you. And I would like to quickly say, as we start off this morning, that whether you're a single business, you're a business owner, you are a one-man business, you're the one who is doing everything right now, you will still be able to learn from what we are about to discuss. And if you are already established to an extent and you already have people working with you and you're moving on, to become from a small scale business, you're moving on to become a medium scale business, you will also learn and benefit from this discussion this morning. And I would like to throw the phone lines open towards the end of the session, maybe 10 minutes towards the end of the session, so that I can get our reactions or our questions, if there are any questions that you would like to be clear of. So you can join us on our Facebook handle, www.facebook.com/Aloore Radio. On YouTube, you can just search for Aloore Radio. And our website is www.alooreradio.com. Our phone number 090-3985-3731. I'll take the number again. 090-3985-3731. So let's go straight into the business of the day. We're looking at cost and money management for small and medium scale businesses. And like I said, if you are also a one-man business, you will learn from what we're discussing. Now, managing cost is fundamental to the success of any business. In fact, it's the most crucial thing to the success of any business. So, apart from your product offering or your service offering, what the idea that you want to push out there. Once you're pushing that idea out there, managing cost or controlling cost is another very, very important, very, very crucial thing that you have to pay attention to, right? So managing cost is fundamental to the success of any business, but it's particularly pertinent, very, very, very pertinent to smaller companies, especially if you're a smaller business, you're a medium scale business, you're a small scale business. You will need to pay more attention to managing cost, because the truth is that bigger organizations might be able to get away, with not tightening or not totally scrutinizing cost control, even though it will be to their benefit if they do, but they can still get away with it. But for a small and medium scale business, you are not likely to be able to get away with it that well. So that's why we're looking at what do we need to do, to manage cost and manage money. When we talk about money, we're saying the business finance, or the finance of your business. What are the things that we need to put in place to be able to manage it? And so the truth is that whatever it is you're doing, if all you're doing right now is trade, if all you're doing right now is you're buying and you're reselling, at a margin, there's still costs involved. There's still costs that you're incurring, right? And so you need to understand how to manage that cost, control that cost properly. And also, when you have been able to manage control the cost, how do you now manage the finances of whatever that transaction or that business it is that you're doing, right? No, so my starting statement here is that whatever cost you're incurring must have an impact on your business. The moment you start a business, you set up, even if it is that you're buying something from somewhere at a lower price, and then you're have an opportunity to be able to sell it to other clients or other customers at a higher price. So there's a markup, there's a margin on it. The moment you're incurring any cost at all, it must have an impact on your business. It must have an impact on the bottom line, which is also called the profit of your business. So whatever cost you're incurring and is not directly impacting your business, it's not directly impacting your bottom line, that cost has to either be eliminated or be looked into properly. That's why we're looking at this morning. So identifying areas of unnecessary expense when you're smaller, when you're a small business, stops those expenses becoming even bigger as you grow. Now, the moment you start and maybe you've been able to set up, you have 5 people working with you, you have 10 people working with you, and then you look at areas of cost, so some costs that they're redundant, they're not really impacting. I'm going to give you examples as I go on with this discussion this morning, right? So there are areas that you're spending money on, but it's not really giving you any meaningful impact in your business. If you don't begin to take closer look at those things now, as you grow, as that business grows, those expenses, those costs will also grow with it. And the truth is that once it grows with it, it begins to eat at your profit. It begins to eat at your bottom line, right? Which you don't want to happen, because you're not running an NGO, you're running a business which you desire to be profitable to you, right? So the key, right, is sitting down and looking at where your business or where you as a business are spending your money. So what are the things? One of the things I've discovered over time with small business owners is that we find it very difficult to be able to sit down and scrutinize our business. At times I know it could be a very difficult process, but until we do this, there's no chance of even growing. Because you see, until you are able to sit down and say, okay, so all I have invested in this business is 50,000. All I have invested in this business is 250,000. All I have invested in this business is 500,000. It's $1 million, it's 2 million. Okay, so this 2 million, this 50,000, where has it gone to? How have I spent it? What are the costs? What are the expenses that this money has entered into? What are the things that, okay, for instance, if it's a service business, so what were the things we bought? What were the, the other activities that we engaged in, okay, that we spent this 50,000 on? And then with all those activities that were those expenses, what is the return? What has been able to come back in? We need to be able to sit down and look at that. See, because until you do that, you will just be putting money into a bottomless pit, which is what we want to avoid as business owners. So the key is sitting down and taking a good look at where you as a business are spending money. Where is that money going into? And by having an overview of all the different costs to your business, you have a good starting point for making tweaks that could have a big impact on your cash flow. All right. So if you're able to sit down and you take a clear overview. Okay, so this cost. Let me just permit me to jump a bit ahead of myself. One of the costs we're going to be looking at, for instance, is marketing or advertising cost. Okay, so your advertising cost or your marketing cost, what is it bringing? So you are spending money, maybe you're doing flyers, you're doing this. So what is the impact of that? Many business owners do not really sit down to take account of such. All you're doing is you feel like we must be out there. Perfect, it's beautiful. We have to be out there. Your business has to be out there. But the means, the medium by which you're being out there, is it being profitable? Is it bringing any impact? Is it giving you any ROI? Is it giving you any return on that investment? You need to be able to sit down and look at that. That's very important. So by having an overview of all the different costs to your business, you have a very good starting point to making tweaks. So for instance, like that example that I gave, so I'm spending money on advertising, but I'm focusing more, let's say, on flyer distribution. And with all the flyer distribution, I'm not getting any return. Nobody's, calling in to even make inquiries about the business, or even if they call in and then we ask, how did you get to know about our business? They're not even mentioning the flyers. Maybe it's just social media marketing that they're mentioning. As, we saw it on Facebook or we saw it on Instagram. Maybe that's all that they are mentioning. So that means that we need to now sit down, right, and say, okay, these flyers, what have we been able to do? How many of them have we been able to do? What are the channels that we've been able to distribute them? And then what is the return we're getting on this? So let's say we've been able to do 10,000 flyers, 50,000 flyers, and we're not getting anything from it. So we need to now say, okay, it looks like our social media marketing is giving us more impact than the physical flyer marketing that we're doing. Okay, so why don't we spend more on the social media marketing? That's where you begin to tweak, but you will not know that until you pay attention to these costs. Let's go on a quick musical break, and when we return, we'll talk about this cost. We'll mention a few of these costs that are very relevant to us as business owners. We'll just say a few things about them and see how and where we need to begin to work on these costs.
Actress on the beat.
But I'm Cause no one knows tomorrow. You know you know tomorrow, my brother. Tomorrow be they make you know there. So better use your head, oh. I beg you no go lose God to my brother. So I say, my shady, lie, me, my shady, oh, lie. My shady, lie, me, my shady, my shady. Every on this, every on this,
welcome back to the Business and Life series on Aloore Radio, and we're transmitting from the GSM studio at the Ministry of Information, Culture and Tourism, Secretariat Agodi, Ibadan. And you can join us on our Facebook handle, that's www.facebook.com/Aloore Radio. On YouTube, just search for Aloore Radio, and our website is www.aloreradio.com. And like I said earlier, our mobile number, which we hope to be able to open at the end of this session or towards the end of this session, is 090 3985 3731. 090 3985 3731. Okay. So we've been able to try to lay the foundation of our topic for today, which is cost and money management for businesses. And so we've been able to lay the foundation and try to see that costs and understanding cost and managing costs and controlling costs is very, very important to the success of our business. Now, so let's quickly mention a few of the costs that are important for us to know. And I quickly want to say this. I understand that some of these costs may not apply to you depending on the kind of business you're running. For instance, there's been this change in the business landscape. Right now, there are a lot of businesses, which is one of the reasons why we will be mentioning this cost and seeing how to control them. Now, so I understand that there are a lot of businesses that are operating largely without setting of these costs anymore. It's as if they've been completely eliminated, even though underlining technically they are not eliminated, but at least they've been completely reduced. Now, what I mean is, you might be operating directly online. You might be running a virtual business, as it were, and all that you're incurring cost on is logistics. So when people make an order, well, not all, but at least that's one of the most important costs that you're incurring is logistics, to be able to get the goods to whoever has ordered, right? So for those of us who are running businesses that still these costs still directly apply to, so I wanted to quickly mention them. We have fixed costs, right? And then we have variable costs. We have direct costs, we have indirect costs, and very importantly this morning, I'm going to be also talking about operational costs, or what some call operating cost. I will get there very, very soon. It's quite important. So fixed costs, when we talk about fixed costs, what are we talking about? We're talking about costs that remain the same no matter how much your company is producing, or no matter what those costs remain the same. Okay, and then when we talk about that, we're talking about costs like, for instance, rent, costs like salaries, insurance, at least to a large extent for a good period of time. Those are supposed to be fixed. Okay, now these costs are not tied to the level of your activity. For instance, no matter what increase you have in your activity, you are not likely to pay higher rent. I mean, if you have been, let's say you have an office space or you have a warehouse space, and so you're renting a warehouse, you're renting an office space, you're renting a place where you're operating out of. and let's assume that so something happens, your business begins to do very well, and you're making so much, you're supplying so much, or you're producing so much, or ultimately they're not going to say, okay, so by next year, because you're doing so well, your fixed cost, which is your rent, has to automatically increase. No, there has to already have been an agreement. For instance, if it's a 3-year agreement that you had, that okay, so we're going to be paying this for the next 3 years, so it's a fixed cost. It's not something that we can just change at the snap of a finger. All right, so things like salaries, for instance, except there's a review, all things being equal, at least you know that's a fixed cost. All right. Now, so since you have to pay fixed costs regardless of how much you sell, it is important to understand and minimize fixed costs on early, as in very, very early. For instance, what I mean by that, we said one of the things that we regard as fixed costs is rent, for instance. So either you're renting an office, you're renting a manufacturing place, a space for manufacturing, or a warehouse, a storage space. Okay, if you're renting any of this, one of the ways you can control that cost is you not doing more than what your business capacity can handle at this present time. For instance, okay, so all you need is a say 100 feet by 200 feet of space, and what you rented is about 300 feet by 500 feet of space. You're incurring cost that is not necessary. That cost is not necessary at that onset. If your business has grown to the place where you now need that much space, then it is understandable. But at the start, you don't need to go and spend so much on that. I've seen cases where some people you're starting off and you have a large office space, and to the ordinary eye it looks like, oh, this is good, but it's eating deep at your business expense. It's eating deep at your cost, because maybe all you need is just a small space where you can have your office, have a display side, and that's all. Maybe that's all you need, but you have spent much more on incurring that taking that office space that now in turn is useless. It's useless. A couple of years ago, I know a business that didn't really need that much of an office space. They didn't really need that much, so at the end of the day, the office space they took was about 4 or 5 times the size of what they really needed. So at the end of the day, they were now incurring that cost. So at some point, they needed to now start looking out for someone who can come and get that. I mean, they can sublet part of the office to. It was quite a bad decision to have been made, because that storage, that space they had was not useful for them. So they were just paying that rent out of the profit they were making as a business. Okay, so we need to be able to control that cost right from the beginning. Do not allow, if you need to expand, you will expand. All right, but don't go and take what you will need in the next 5 years at the onset. You will just be wasting money. You'll be spending money which will not be very advisable. The second kind of cost, or this kind of type of cost we'll be talking about this morning, is variable cost, or our variable costs. All right, so variable costs are costs that any business cost, that rises and falls with, say, production, or rises and falls with service offering. For instance, if your business increases production by 50%, and then you need to buy more things. Let's assume that say you've been producing whatever it is you're producing, whatever product it is, all you needed was maybe about 50,000 units of this particular raw material or so, to be able to produce. But suddenly you have a contract, you have something, and you then need to increase production based on that contract, which means you will need to get more of these raw materials. So that is a variable cost. You all you needed in time past was just 50,000 units. So because now you have more to supply, you will definitely need more raw materials in the place of production, right? So you need to be able to look at that. And then, at times, because you have more to now supply, or you have more to now do, or you have more service. For instance, if you're running, let's assume, a cleaning service, and you've had your clients, you've had clients over the time, and let's say the largest building that you clean is maybe a 2-bedroom or a 3-bedroom, apartment, right? So the number of people that you need to do that. But suddenly you get a new client, say a school or a business complex that has about 40, 50 rooms. You can't have the same number of staff working on that. That means you have to either hire some form of labor that may not be fixed, but at least for that period, to be able to finish that task, you may need to hire more people. So in that place, in that particular situation, it's a variable cost. All right. So things like raw materials, things like extra labor that you might need to bring on board to accomplish that particular task might be or is considered variable cost. Now, direct cost is the third one that we'll be looking at this morning. Direct costs are specific expenses incurred in getting your product or service to the customer, and it actually, direct costs involves a number of things. So whatever it is, whatever activities you need to carry out to be able to get that product or that service to the customer is considered a direct cost. Okay. Another thing is that a direct cost could be either fixed or variable. It depends on the organization, it depends on the industry, it depends on a number of things. But the direct costs are costs that are specific expenses, things that you need to now do before you can get the product or the service to the customer. And the fourth kind of cost we'll be looking at this morning is indirect cost, which are expenses that a business cannot directly link to production, or service offering. They might include overhead costs involved in running your businesses and maintaining it. There are certain things that come into indirect costs. For instance, the things you use in your office, computers, maybe you have mobile phones, stationaries, those costs, those things that are essential to the running of a business, things like utilities, right? Power, water, all those things come under indirect cost. Now, so we're looking at all these costs. Now, like I said earlier, for instance, if you're someone I'm buying something, from a particular source and I am selling it, I do not have most of these costs. For instance, I don't have, as it were, I'm not paying rent. I'm not paying for any storage space. I'm not paying for, maybe I'm just using a part of my room, to store those products. And then when people order online, I just push it. Now, but you now need to begin to look at something. What are the costs you can control? For instance, where you're sourcing your material, those products you're selling, is that the best price you can actually get? Is that the best price you can actually get in purchasing? Or even that same source, can you negotiate with them because you're now buying more and you're now buying more consistently? Can you begin to negotiate with them and, all in the bid to drive down or reduce your cost of acquisition so that in the process of you now buying to sell, you're able to make more profit. And then another cost you might look at as someone who is doing that is your logistics cost. So when customers make an order, are you the one that directly takes that product to the customer, or do you have an arrangement with the logistics organization that now picks it up and takes it to deliver to the customer? So those are the things you need to look at. Now, in the process of doing that, I see a lot of people just follow the trends. You just see, so the new thing is everybody's getting logistics, bike man, logistics organizations to drop off their products. That's a beautiful trend. But for you, is it cost effective? You need to be able to know, is it cost effective? So this bike guys that are delivering for me at this cost, by the time you look at the cost of purchase, because it's absolutely impossible for you to just purchase and sell. There is somewhere in between. You have to market, you have to advertise. So in the place of advertising, what's the cost? Purchasing, advertising, and your logistics. What are the costs? You need to be able to factor in all those costs, look at them and say, okay, where can I tweak? Which of these costs can I actually tweak? Which of these costs can I look at and say, okay, this cost, I can work on this. This cost, I can work on this. For instance, even in your logistics, you can negotiate further when it comes to logistics. Now there is a lot of competition. So take advantage of the competition, negotiate further. Look at, okay, so company A, logistics company A will help me deliver each unit of my product at 500 naira. Logistics company B is giving me an offer at 350 naira. You're making, even if it's just 150 on each unit, you're making something. You're making something from it. It's increasing your bottom line, it's increasing your profitability. So you need to be able to look at all these costs per time and look at how you can reduce them, control them, or there are some costs you need to completely eliminate. Like the example I gave at the beginning of this session, I'm spending money on marketing, but that particular channel of marketing is not giving me the results. It's not bringing anything back. I love something that some organizations do. Whenever you either call them or walk into their space, the first thing they ask you, after welcoming you, is to ask how you got to know about them. What they're simply doing is they want to know which of their marketing channels is effective. They're spending money on marketing. So which of them is effective? They want to know which one is bringing more people. Now, if you know the one that is bringing more people, there are two things that are likely. If you know that, okay, so this is the channel that is bringing more people, you're likely to pay more attention to that channel. And then the second thing, you're likely to spend more money on that particular channel so that you can get more people to come in. Because that's the essence of you incurring, like I said at the beginning, the essence of you incurring any cost is to see the impact on your business. It has to impact your business. If it is not impacting your business, then scrap it, eliminate it, slash that cost as much as you can. Okay. All right. Let's move on this morning. The next cost we'll be talking about, which is for me one of the most important, is your operational cost. Okay, so some people call it operating cost, operational cost. In some spaces, it's called OPEX. That is operational expenses or operating expenses. Now, operating expense is any type of expense that a company incurs during its normal day-to-day activities, day-to-day operations, right? So on a daily basis, what are your operational costs? Do you even know? Have you been able to pay attention to that? Yeah, you need to look for ways to reduce your operating expenses. You constantly need to do it. And let me tell you this, tweaking your operational expenses or your operational cost should become a culture. Now, this is what I mean. Whatever you start, when you start your business and you're able to pay close attention to your operational cost, you are likely to still be doing the same as your business grows. But if you're the type that you started, you're running, oh, and thank God you're doing well, but you're not even paying attention to your operational cost, so you don't even know what is happening, you're likely to just carry that on even as you grow bigger. So, what are the important things we need to know when it comes to operational cost? So, this cost and expense cannot be totally removed, even if you need to control operational costs. There are costs that cannot be totally removed, right? But business owners must make smart decisions about which areas they need to slash or they need to control. That's why you don't have a choice as a business owner. These things you must sit with. You must sit with your operational costs, for instance. You must ask yourself certain questions when it comes to your operational costs. Okay, so which is space we operate from? What are the things we can reduce? So is this space too large? Is it functional? Are we making full use of this space? If you're not, then you don't need to. You can look for a smaller space. If that space is adequate, okay, so the other things that come with this space, how does it, for instance, what are we spending on utilities? What are we spending on? You need to be able to look at all this operational costs, that you operate on, that you consume daily. For instance, if you have an operation, if you have an office where a business where you use the internet, you heavily rely on internet usage. Now, so there are internet subscriptions that may work for you, and you need to constantly look at your options. That's one very important thing about operational cost. Constantly look at your options. Constantly evaluate your options. What are my options? Do I have a better option? Do I have a more economical option? Now, not necessarily options that you just choose. For instance, you can choose an option that will not now be effective. But if I choose this option, will it still be that effective? And will I still get what I want to get from there? So operating expenses or operating costs is very, very important, right? For instance, salaries is under operating. You can put it under operating expenses. All right. So my organization, in the reality, technically, I don't need more than 3-4 people working there, and right now I have about 10 people. So that means that cost is accruing. If for instance, I've seen organizations where people are redundant, where staffers are redundant. They're not, because there are too many hands available. So some people just feel like, okay, I can sit down and some others will do the work, and at the end of the day, I'm getting the salary. I don't know if you understand what I'm saying. You don't need that as a business owner. You don't need that if you're running a business. You need to be able to know exactly what each person's capacity is. What can they do? Because you have a job description already. You have activities, you have roles that they need to fit into, right? So you need to look at things like that, right? I mentioned about marketing, sales materials, things like that, repairs, utilities, logistics, transportation. For instance, if you're into manufacturing, there are things that you will need to buy. You can just not manufacture out of thin air. So you want to buy raw materials. How do you get your raw materials from the source to you? Is it that you have a vehicle that all you need to do is fuel and pay the driver a monthly salary to go pick those things and then come deliver them so that you can use? Or do you depend on contract logistics organizations, which will definitely cost you more? So those are the things you need to look at. So your operating expenses are very, very important. Now, this is where I really want to get to talking about operating expenses. In operating expenses, you are likely to have leakages. There is likely to be leakages. Now, what you need to do as a business person is look at how you can block those leakages. Now, this is what I mean. So, certain things that you're probably spending money on when it comes to operations are probably not even making any impact on your business. They're probably not. If you remove those costs completely, you probably will not feel them. You probably will not feel the impact. You probably will not feel the effect on your business. Why? Because as far as you're concerned, you just feel like, oh, we must spend money on this, but it's actually not bringing anything. It's actually not impacting your business in any way. So you need to look at those leakages. You need to be able to block leakages. It is very, very important, right? There are situations where instead of you buying a particular brand of product, right, you can look for a brand that is equally as good, but maybe they don't have the brand equity, as it were, that brand that you're using does, which means it will be cheaper. The quality won't be less, but it will be cheaper. At the end of the day, by the time you put that together, it is increasing your profit. So you need to be able to look at leakages. There's some things going on probably in your organization, if you're one that runs a physical place. So there's some things that are probably, you're running that you don't need, but they constantly run, but you don't need them. You need to be able to look at these operating costs and say, look, this cost is not doing anything for this business. It's not adding anything to us. Let us remove this. And in fact, as a business owner, you have to be a bit flexible when it comes to operation costs. There's some things you can tweak. Look at it. Remove some, slash some, and look at the impact. Slash some expenses, slash some costs, and see, okay, if I slash this, what impact is it going to have? Is it going to be negative? Is it even going to be felt at all? Of course, don't slash things like your marketing. What you would rather do with your marketing is to look at the more profitable marketing channels. You can't, if as a business you begin to tweak your marketing, you're killing your business, because you need to be out there. People need to know that you're there. Okay? For instance, let me give you a fantastic example as I begin to round off this morning. There was this IT infrastructure. They were service providers. What do we call them? Internet service providers back then, And this particular service provider had someone who was running it, and then that person had to leave, so a new CEO came on board. And then this new CEO, decided he wanted to tweak some costs. Decided to say, okay, so if you have an issue as a client, instead of engineers coming out to fix it for free, which is supposed to be the normal thing, started billing. So I'm a client, I'm using your device, I'm using your internet, and then there's an issue, there's something that needs to be rectified. I will be required to pay before an engineer can come out to fix it. And everybody told him that wasn't going to work, but he felt no, he wanted to get tweak cost as much as possible. He felt engineers going out to work was costing him more, costing the organization more. Okay, so he implemented that, and customers who know that they're not supposed to be paying for engineers to come out to check their devices or check the issues and the problems started abandoning the service. They stopped subscribing, they stopped using the service, and eventually the business ran to almost zero. People that the organization that had clients in hundreds, they started dwindling to the extent that they now couldn't even survive as an organization. So those are the kind of things you don't want to do. You don't want to tweak operating costs, for instance, and affect your organization. right? So the more very important thing is that your goal as a business owner is to eliminate leakages. You can't allow leakages. And let me say this, the leakages you continue to allow will grow with your business. As long as those leakages continue to grow with your business, it continues to eat at your profit, at your bottom line. So at the end of the day, what the potential of your business is not reached because you could have actually done more in terms of profitability. I think we won't have time to go into managing money this morning, but at least I believe we've been able to see some of cost control, cost management. In the next maybe 5 minutes, if we have anybody who wants to call in, the number to call is 090-3985-3731. 090-3985-3731. So, like I've been saying, leakages in operating costs are very, very important. You need to be able to block them, identify them, and block those leakages, or else as a business owner you will not be getting what you're putting in. You're putting in a lot of your time, you're putting in your money, you're putting in a lot of things. You should be getting those things back, but the moment there are leakages, you will not be able to get them back. And you see, it's easy to identify those leakages. Just sit down and take a good look, take a good account at the things that you are, the costs that you're incurring. Repairs, for instance, if you're using devices that constantly need repairs, you know that those devices are not good for you. As much as possible, it will cost you more, but change them to devices that are more reliable, things that you can use without breakages every time, things you don't need to constantly fix, right? So look at all those things and begin to I can't emphasize logistics or transportation enough, because the truth is that every single business thrives on some form of logistics or transportation. So look at your logistics, look at your transportation. What am I doing? How can we improve, on the costs of logistics or transportation? Let me give you a good example. I know I heard of someone in Lagos who, makes food. She does not the regular type of food. She makes this bolly and fish and stew and all that. Very lovely. And then the business started growing. Demand started increasing. Now she was the same that would, of course, there was no way she could do it but to use the services of dispatch riders, people who would she'll pay them per per delivery. And then the demand got so much that she now saw it was better for her to have her own dispatch riders. So she's spending less, because on her own dispatch riders, all she needed to do was to fuel the bikes and then pay the riders. And that greatly reduced the cost of logistics. Massively reduced the cost of logistics. And that also improved her profitability. It improved what she was making in her business. That's a good operation. Like looking at where is the money going, and she was able to block that leakage, because she would just have kept spending a lot on logistics while she could have saved a lot on logistics. I think we're going to stop here this morning. It's been another wonderful session on the Business and Life series. Join us next week, Tuesday, from 10 to 11, as we bring another professional to talk on another very important topic that has to do with either business or life. So this morning, if you're a business owner, if you're someone who is aspiring to get into business, please always understand that your costs have to be controlled and managed properly if you're going to make the best out of your business. Thank you very much. It's been a wonderful time this morning. Till we come your way next week, Tuesday. Have a wonderful week.
What is ours? Here we are as a people with one heart for one cause. Where the time